Welcome to the Atheist Witch Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast for witches or any curious minds to learn more about a non-theistic approach to witchcraft. Welcome back to the Atheist Witch Podcast, a bi-weekly show for curious and science-minded witches. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a topic that's fundamental to all forms of the craft, whether you are a lifelong atheist like me or just starting your journey. Today we're talking about archetypes. We're going to explore the psychological science behind these universal figures, including the classic Maiden, Mother, and Crone, and then we'll dig deep into how we can use these powerful psychological tools in our modern practice, especially for visualization, divination, and shadow work. This episode is packed with practical exercises, so get ready to take some notes or just settle in and let your subconscious do the work. Before we dive into the main topic, I wanted to share a little snippet from my recent personal practice, and it actually ties directly into today's discussion. I've been thinking a lot about the concept of the future self, or the higher self. I know this often comes up in spiritual discussions, but for a science-minded witch like me, I see it as a powerful, aspirational archetype that I am actively building for myself every day. My current vision for my future self is someone who is strong, confident, and self-assured in all things, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. She maintains a beautiful balance in life and believes that anything can be achieved with the right effort. Basically, she's a bit of a powerhouse. When I engage in my deep meditation, or as some may call it, shamanic journeying or hedge writing, I often try to connect with this part of myself. For instance, in one journey, my spirit guide presented me with this archetype as a powerful woman, sometimes adorned with silver armor like a warrior, other times in flowing white gowns, but always holding an aura of that strong, balanced, and sometimes fiery energy. This is about consciously shaping and visualizing an internal archetype, which is a version of myself that I can strive toward, and using visualization and deep introspection to figure out what actions she would take. I'm literally planting the seeds for my own neuroplasticity and guiding my brain to recognize and follow the path to becoming that person. So think about the archetypal qualities that you would like to cultivate in your own life. Visualize them, and then use that image as a compass for your daily actions. It's an incredibly practical and powerful act of self-directed magic. Let's move on now to the main topic of the episode. The concept of archetypes is a rich and fascinating one, and it's a huge component of the spicy psychology that underpins an atheist witch practice. At its core, an archetype is a universal inherited idea, pattern of thought, or image that is present in the collective unconscious of humans. These aren't just characters, they are fundamental models of people, behaviors, or roles found across all cultures and throughout history. The modern concept of archetypes is most famously associated with Carl Jung. Jung believed that the human unconscious mind contains a sort of universal library of experiences and images passed down through generations. He called this the collective unconscious. Now, as an atheist witch, I don't believe in a literal, mystical collective mind, but I do believe in evolutionary psychology and the shared human experience. We all inherit certain psychological structures, like the need for security, the fear of the dark, or maybe the drive for power. This makes these archetypal patterns universally recognizable, and these patterns manifest as archetypes, universal behaviors, personality traits, and energies that resonate with the human experience. Witches, long before Jung, have intuitively worked with these archetypal forces for centuries, often embodying them as deities, spirit guides, or characters in folklore. It's also crucial to understand that every archetype has a polarity, or a light side and a shadow side. And this is vital to understand for any serious shadow work. Let's take the archetype of the hero. The integrated light side could be courage, commitment, and taking disciplined action, whereas the shadow side is aggression, reckless confrontation, and a need for validation. Or the warrior. Integrated means self-discipline, honor, and defending boundaries, whereas the shadow side of the warrior could mean violent aggression, rigid thinking, or an inability to compromise. Or let's look at the mother. The integrated side of the mother archetype is nurturing, providing of security and abundant creation, whereas her shadow side is mothering, controlling, and maybe a bit manipulative in her protection. By recognizing both poles, your practice can be more ethically and effectively balanced, ensuring that you embody the highest expression of the archetype and not its shadow. The most well-known archetypes in pagan and witchcraft circles are, of course, the triple goddess, the maiden, mother, and crone. The maiden archetype is associated with new beginnings, enthusiasm, learning, and fresh starts. In the Wheel of the Year, you might see her energy peak during Ostara or Beltane. The mother is the archetype of nurturing, abundance, fulfillment, and power. Her energy is at its zenith during Letha, the summer solstice, and Lunasa, the first harvest. The crone embodies wisdom, endings, release, and the final stages of life. She's often associated with the darker half of the year, particularly Mabon and Samhain, and the waning and dark moon phases. But this is just one set of archetypes. To really maximize their utility in an atheist practice, we need to look at the wider Jungian library, which provides a far more nuanced map for the human psyche. Think of these as different personality lenses that you could consciously adopt. Here are a few essential archetypes that are incredibly useful for the science-minded witch. First up is the sage, or the librarian. This is one of my personal favorites. The sage embodies wisdom, knowledge, research, and critical thinking. They seek the truth and understand that the path to wisdom is paved with skepticism and data. For a visualization cue for the sage, you could picture an old library, or maybe the smell of books, the quiet certainty of deep focus. For a practical use of this archetype, maybe when starting a new project or researching an herb, consciously channel the sage. This means slowing down, checking 3 sources, admitting what you don't know, and then letting go of bias. It can keep your craft grounded in reality. What about the hero? The hero is the archetype of the one who overcomes adversity. It's not about physical strength, it's about facing down a challenge, committing to a goal, and taking responsibility. So a visualization cue for the hero could be feeling the surge of resolve in your chest, the certainty of the objective, and then that singular focus on the next necessary step. And in practical use, when you're procrastinating on a difficult task, like maybe cleaning up a messy space or finally sitting down to organize your book of shadows, invoke the hero. The spell is the focused action, and the result is the success of the quest. Slightly different is the warrior. The warrior is the archetype of self-mastery, courage, and boundary setting. So for visualization of the warrior, imagine a cool protective metal all around you. Your spine is straight, your vision is clear, your voice is low and firm. And in practical use, use the warrior's energy before a difficult conversation, when setting clear, non-negotiable personal boundaries, or when performing a banishing spell that requires absolute, unshakable conviction and firmness. On the other hand, you could try the trickster or the jester. This archetype is crucial for keeping us humble. The trickster brings humor, it challenges the status quo, and it reminds us that sometimes the most rigid structure needs to be knocked over with a laugh. Visualization here is a quick, wry smile, the freedom of not caring what others think, a light footstep, always ready to pivot to something else. So in practical use the trickster when you find your practice is getting a little too serious or too dogmatic. If a spell fails, don't despair. Channel the trickster to find the humor in the situation, reframe the failure as a necessary lesson, and then try something completely different. The last specific archetype I'll bring up today is the lover, or the sensualist. This archetype governs passion and intimacy with yourself and others, connection, and the enjoyment of the senses. This one is vital for kitchen witchery and for connecting with the physical world. So, a visualization cue for the lover could be focusing on the weight of a warm blanket, or the rich scent of warm spices, the satisfying texture of bread dough. The physical world is beautiful and welcoming. And in practical use, you could channel the lover when you're crafting something in order to ground yourself. This might be cooking a meal, taking a ritual bath, or making a self-love potion. Focus entirely on the smell, the texture, and the taste. Let the physical world be your source of magic and connection. Now, I know some of you might be wondering, this all sounds great, but what about the gods and goddesses? I see people working with Athena or Hermes or Hecate all the time. And this is where the archetype concept becomes flexible for the atheist witch. If an archetype is a universal pattern in the collective unconscious, then deities are simply the most crystallized, powerful, and historically relevant archetypes that we have. We don't need to believe in a literal Zeus on Mount Olympus to benefit from the power of the Zeus archetype, the pattern of ultimate authority, strategic power, and dominion. We can use these ancient figures as highly defined, ready-made lenses for self-cultivation. For example, let's take Hecate. Hecate is often invoked for crossroads, boundaries, and liminal spaces. For the atheist witch, she embodies the archetype of the decision maker, or the guardian of transition. If you're facing a major life decision, like a crossroad, you don't pray to Hecate, but you do visualize her energy, that clarity, that deep old wisdom, and the ability to see through the dark things. This strengthens your own rational, intuitive decision-making process. The spell is focusing your mind on a massive established power source to find your own inner clarity. Another example is Hermes, or Mercury. Hermes is the god of communication, travel, and commerce. He represents the archetype of the connector. If you have an important negotiation or need to study and absorb information quickly, you could focus on the swift, clever, articulate energy of the Hermes pattern. You could use him as a mental blueprint for optimal communication. By viewing deities as a powerful, emotionally charged psychological model, rather than a literal being, you gain access to thousands of years of human thought and association dedicated to defining specific behavioral and energetic patterns. It's like downloading the most advanced personality software into your brain for a very specific task. So we know what they are. Now let's get into the how for using these non-literal, non-supernatural archetypes in a practical way. We can use them as maps for our own psychological landscape. First step is using archetypes in visualization and ritual. Visualization is arguably one of the most potent forms of magic. When you focus intensely on an image, you're tapping into your mind's ability to create and solidify neural pathways. Before a ritual or spell work for courage, say before a difficult conversation or maybe a work presentation, visualize yourself fully embodying the warrior archetype. How does the warrior stand? What is their breathing pattern? What is their most confident thought? By taking on that persona, you are engaging in a form of self-affirmation, strengthening your own innate capabilities. For a creativity spell, you might visualize the Maiden bringing a bright, fresh, inspirational energy to your mind, opening pathways for new ideas, and banishing self-doubt. You're consciously choosing an internal emotional and psychological state and using the archetype as a trigger. If you're trying to overcome anxiety or instability, perhaps you might envision the earth element as an archetype, embodying stability and groundedness. This image of earth serves as a constant, steady focus to counteract internal turbulence. Let's examine a concrete example of how you might combine archetypes for a single goal. Perhaps negotiating a raise for a new salary. This spell is about psychological preparation, and you need 3 distinct archetypes. Number 1 is the sage. You'll channel the sage for your research phase. This is when you spend time collecting objective market data, calculating your worth, and organizing your achievements into a rational, undeniable argument. Next up is the warrior. You'll channel the warrior for the boundary and resolve phase. Before the meeting, you'll visualize the warrior standing guard. They allow you to be firm and hold the line on your minimum number, and to not let emotional discomfort like fear or guilt allow you to back down. Next is the lover, and you'll channel the lover for the delivery phase, because you can use this archetype to ensure your communication is warm, appreciative, focused on collaboration, rather than being cold or aggressive. You can use the lover to build connection while the warrior maintains the boundary. By consciously stepping into these three roles sequentially, you are mentally rehearsing the perfect approach, maximizing your chance of a positive, grounded, and emotionally intelligent outcome. I want to try a quick exercise with you right now because nothing is more practical than applied psychology. This is how you can use visualization to connect with the sage, that internal archetype of wisdom and critical thinking. Find a comfortable position, sitting or lying down, and if you can, close your eyes. If you don't have time for a guided visualization right now, feel free to fast forward and come back to it later. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose, hold for a count of 3, 2, 1, and let it out through your mouth. We'll do that 2 more times. Deep inhale, hold, and release. One last time, deep inhale, hold, and release. Let your body settle into the surface beneath you. Now, picture a place in your mind where you feel most certain, most focused, and entirely calm. This is your mental library. It's your sacred space of reason. In this place, an archetype is waiting for you. It is the part of your mind that embodies the sage, the librarian, the one who knows how to find the objective truth. You can see them now. Observe their posture. They are steady, calm, and present. Feel the cool, grounded certainty that is radiating from them. Now, think of one challenge that you are facing right now, a decision that you need to make, or a problem that you need to solve. Ask this internal sage one simple question about that challenge. What is the next rational step? Listen to the first clear, rational thought that pops into your head. That is the guidance of your highest, most discerning self, the part of you that separates data from drama. Take one more moment to absorb that clarity. And when you are ready, take one last deep breath and gently open your eyes. You now know how to summon the energy of the sage whenever you need objective clarity. That is the true power of this work. Next, let's talk about how to use archetypes in divination, using the tarot as a map. Tarot is a literal pictorial language built entirely on archetypes. The major arcana, in particular, represent stages of personal growth in the Fool's journey, and each one is a profound archetype on its own. When you pull a major arcana card like the Emperor, who is the father, structure, authority, and boundaries, or perhaps the High Priestess, who is intuition, inner knowing, and wisdom, you're not getting a supernatural prophecy, you're getting a powerful prompt for your own self-reflection. If you pull the Magician, ask yourself, how can I take control of my current situation? Where do I need to use my head more than my heart? How can I clearly state my intentions today? Or if you pull Strength, ask, where am I showing fortitude and compassion right now? Where is my inner lion heart being tested? How can I persevere? Even the court cards, the pages, knights, queens, and kings, are archetypes representing various ages and personalities within each suit's element. You can use them for shadow work. If you pull the Queen of Swords reversed, for example, symbolizing being sharp-tongued or lacking compassion, instead of worrying about an external person, you might ask, where am I allowing my own intellect to to become cutting or overly critical in my life right now? This reframes the reading from a passive prediction to an active psychological tool for introspection and change. What about archetypes in shadow work and journaling? Shadow work is all about bringing the subconscious, hidden aspects of ourselves, our fears, insecurities, and unacknowledged feelings into the light for integration. Archetypes provide a safe, neutral framework for doing this type of deep work. The most fundamental archetype for shadow work is the shadow itself. It's the container for everything we repress or dislike about ourselves. And instead of fighting it, you can use your journal to give the shadow a voice. Write a conversation between your conscious self and the shadow. What negative belief is the shadow trying to protect you from? By personifying this unconscious part, you bring it into the light for integration. As a practical exercise, during the next dark moon, you could set the intention to delve into your shadow self. Write about a recurring fear or self-limiting belief, which is a clear reflection of the shadow. Then use the archetype of the crone, who is wisdom, ending, and release, to bring the writing to a close. Sign it off as the crone who knows. This formal, ritualized framing can make the difficult work feel a bit more safe and powerful. For those who want a more structured approach, I highly recommend performing what I call an archetypal integration interview. You can do this in your Book of Shadows or your journal. It's a 3-step process, and it's a powerful way to rewrite limiting self-narratives using archetypes. Number 1, you'll identify the resistance as an archetype. Write down a specific behavior that you want to change. Perhaps it's procrastination, avoidance, or emotional eating. Give that negative behavior a name and identify an archetype responsible. Perhaps it's the child who doesn't want any responsibility, or the victim who feels utterly powerless. Next, conduct the interview. Write a direct, two-way conversation in your journal. Ask the resistance archetype, "What are you afraid of?" Or, "What are you trying to protect me from?" This reframes the negative behavior as a misguided protective mechanism. Now, write a message to that struggling resistance archetype from your desired archetype, say, the creator or the hero. What does the hero promise? What action does the hero demand? This final step uses the power of narrative to actively engage your neuroplasticity and commit to a new, desired pattern of behavior. All right, time for the Atheist Witch Challenge. This week, your challenge is the 3 archetype power play. Number 1, identify a goal. Pick a difficult, concrete task that you need to complete in the next 7 days, like clearing out clutter, starting a project, or maybe sending a tough email. Next, assign your trio. Break the task into 3 phases. First phase is preparation and research, second is execution and action, third is review or self-care. For each phase, assign a different, specific archetype. For example, sage for research, warrior for action, lover for self-care. The third step is to document and act. Before starting each phase, spend a couple minutes visualizing and consciously embodying that chosen archetype. Document in your journal or your Book of Shadows, which I know many of you are working on right now, how your mental state changed and whether the archetype's energy helped you achieve a rational, desired outcome. This is self-directed neurohacking, and I'm excited for you to see the results of this for yourself. Next time on the Atheist Witch podcast, we will be diving into magical crafts. It's definitely going to be a fun one, so tune in 2 weeks. But before that, get ready. I am launching a brand new deep dive series called the Pantheon series, where we will explore major world pantheons from the Greek and the Norse to the Egyptian and the Hindu, specifically through the lens of archetypes. We'll break down figures like Odin, Isis, and Kali into their core psychological components to show how you can harness their energy in your craft without any spiritual belief required. It's a series that I really think you won't want to miss. You can find me on Instagram at an atheist witch or email your comments and questions to anatheistwitch@gmail.com. Your feedback really does help shapes future episodes of the podcast. Please like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast. It really does help other curious, skeptical witches find the show. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep making your own magic.